Hi, everyone. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the show and the lecture at the beginning. Julia, Brigitte, and Maggie, if you want to join us with your cameras, perfect. If you have a question for one of our writers, please submit it through the Q&A section. Let's just start off with, first of all three plays are amazing and deal with different aspects of education and youth empowerment. Let's start with Maggie and with what part of how did you come up with the fact that gangbangs should be introduced to teachers' lives?
I didn't start with gangbangs. I started with I think a good place for all writing is to start with something you're very afraid of. I'm mostly a horror writer, a horror and genre writer.
Mm-hmm.
So when tasked with writing a play made especially for Zoom, I was like, what's my worst fear related to Zoom? And it's sharing my screen and having something very questionable on it. And the first thing I went to was, what's the most immediately recognizably difficult for a teacher to get past porn. And I was like, pack as many bodies into that one shot as possible.
Which is a real issue, and that has happened quite a bit over the last few months of people accidentally sharing some aspect of their screen that is not supposed to happen. And maybe you could talk a little bit about towing that line of that this could be a huge issue. She could either be potentially fired or something worse, and keeping that that line of as a creative writer to make sure.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I thought the element, and this was cool. The cool thing about workshopping it with you guys was getting to really introduce that element of not just the teacher coming back in and apologizing, but really that fear of she could lose her job. And
Mm-hmm.
we're all understanding what it's like in these conditions now. The sort of threat of not being employed, if you're not already unemployed, is pretty great. And having to survive the perils of moving from a very different environment to online teaching comes with there's a big steep learning curve, and one of those
Yeah.
things is just the function of technology. My mother's a teacher, a lot of my friends are teachers, and I've seen the struggles that they've gone through in terms of the thing I mentioned of not having school provided equipment, not having proper internet connections. So getting to introduce all of those different elements and talk about them in a humorous context was really fun and exciting. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have done that.
Great. Yeah, we loved it, obviously.
Thank you.
Brigitte, yours is obviously probably the closest to Deborah's research as an educator. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration? I know you read some of her articles. What prompted you to write specifically about standardized tests and wealth inequality?
Well, it's funny. She teed it up so amazingly. I think she even
Yeah.
used the word rigged.
Yeah.
That was
She was your pre-show. That was perfect.
But yeah, I read a story that she had shared in one of her essays about her own son when he was in elementary school, and he had taken a standardized test, and the teacher called her and said, we're moving him to remedial reading. Remedial reading group. And she was so confused because she knew that this kid of hers was an avid reader. So she, because she was an educator, she sat down with him and she saw him take the test. And when he was doing reading comprehension, he wasn't flipping back to the selection and reading it to answer the questions. And she said, oh no, you can do that. And he said, oh no, that's cheating. And she said, oh no, they want you to do that. And that's when it came up to me, like, who's they? It wasn't his teachers. It wasn't the people that were actually interacting with the student. It was this mysterious body that was writing tests that were given to everyone. And, and they are rigged. I mean, they're written by a certain group for a certain group. And I actually took the SAT as an adult because back in the day as an actor in New York, it was a great gig tutoring the SATs.
Yeah.
It was hourly, really high. And I took the verbal, I didn't take the math. But I took the verbal section and I remember how creepy it felt, and Krista Scott Reed, my director, she's so wonderful. She said, they give you a poem and then it's like the B represents A, mankind, B, and it's like a poem. And so, I got a perfect score when I was an adult not because I was so, intellectually amazing. It was because I knew exactly the hoops they wanted me to jump through, and I knew how to jump through them. And I don't think that's what we want to create, a citizenry that knows how to jump through hoops.
Right. Can you also touch on the wealth inequality aspect of your play and how that relates to standardized tests?
Well, I mean, she said it in her talk before. It's, wealthy families can afford tutors, and also, Kelly McAndrew, the actress who played Terry, we both went to a master's program about 20 years ago. We both got our MFAs, and we actually had a conversation during rehearsal of, would we do that again with how expensive school is now? And we both were like, maybe not.
Yep.
And college is so much more expensive than it was when I went. And, it's just, money is access, and that is not democracy. I think she said something so great about, we're creating a society to be, the schools are set up to teach kids how to be ruled, not rulers, unless they're coming from the ruling class. And that, the word ruling class, woof, that sends chills up my spine.
Yep. Let's turn to Julia. Your script obviously is hilarious. Your characters were extremely clear. Can you talk about
It's actually a terrifying, horrific warning, but thank you, Casey.
It was a warning. I was crying. I'm going to be honest. Can you talk about, no, can you talk about anything? No, talk about, cause you're a very quick rewriter. I don't know if that's an actual word.
Don't tell people that. Guys, I got it right on the first try.
She did get it right on the first time. She's a perfect writer.
On the first try, everybody.
But talk about when you revise, are you listening to your actors? Are you listening to, obviously, your director as well? What's your process in rewriting?
So I think it's, there's so many ways to answer that question. Specifically in comedy, you have to rewrite. I don't know, because comedy is all about finding out what is or what isn't funny. So you just do it in the room, or, preferably if it's a play, you do it in front of an audience, and then you find out if it's funny. We don't have that luxury here. So we just, you see what's funny, and sometimes a line is funny coming out of one actor's mouth and it's not funny coming out of another, because every actor brings their own 3D self, their own, this sounds a little woo, but biorhythm to a role, and you learn to write for them. And then you also learn to write for your director's rhythm. Comedy is rhythm and speed and a lot of other sort of things that are more intuitive and innate, and you figure out the people you're working with so you can write around them and for them.
Obviously, teachers are working longer hours, lower pay. There seems to be an unending supply of demands placed on teachers, and just the fact that you placed a musical in the hands of a teacher over Zoom in a pandemic seems like the ultimate demand. Can you just talk about where that came from and your thought process on demands of teachers?
Sure. So my mom briefly taught, when I was in elementary school, she briefly taught the drama program, mostly just to give us a little show to do when we were kids. And I grew up in Los Angeles, which means that a lot of the parents were involved in the industry in some way. And the way that the tiny little show for literal babies got out of hand in Los Angeles was because parents just showed up and wanted, the parents who had the access, who had the availability, who had the money to be obnoxiously available, I would say, came in and made their demands clear, basically, which was if this could not go up at the Long Wharf, my kid will not perform in it. And the pressure it put on the teachers was insane. And it also, I think, completely lost, the poor thing was I completely lost perspective of what this show should have actually been for, which was that it should have been a thing that brought the school together, that gave the kids something fun to do, and gave the parents something to equitably pitch in to make for other families that they go to school with. It should have been a community thing, and it turned into, as I think so many things in so many aspects of our society turn into, like, how can I get mine?
Mm.
You know, is my kid going to get the best role? Is my kid going to look the best, have the best costume, have the best whatever? And that's all related to ego and I-centrism. And it's not related to making your school into I think what it should be, which is something to help everyone live better.
Yeah. We'll end on this general question. If anyone wants to popcorn it, you know, we conceive Pick Plays to write about specific topics. And obviously, you know, writers are often told to write what you know, which I think is, you know, quite limiting oftentimes, because there's lots of wonderful, complex issues that need to be discussed. Can you talk about your process of writing to a specific topic that you may not know about and your research in that topic? And it may not be, you know, this particular play, but other complex issues as well.
I think it's gold to get, you know, some
We're gold.
To get some parameters, you know, and I mean, that's why I got into theater. You know, it's like every time you do a show, you're going into a whole new world and learning about a whole new world. And so when someone gives me, you know, a topic, it's, you know, it's half the job is knowing what to write about, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. I think that I say you don't have to write, you don't have to know everything, but you better know something about what you're writing. It has to come from a part of you that feels organic, real, and unique to you. And then I think you can allow yourself make yourself do the work of branching out and figuring out what you wish you knew and what you need to know to tell that story.
I'm totally with that, and with Brigitte. I think that having it's almost easier to start writing when you have parameters, for me at least, from the outside, to go from the outside in and figure out what that personal connection is for me. You know, how can I bring something from my unique perspective to this topic or to this set of parameters that makes it exciting for me, that helps me dig in and share something special. But starting out with the sort of like limitless availability of I could write anything in the whole wide world, far less interesting and far harder. Like, it's so much more difficult than if somebody says, I mean, as you came to us playwrights with, hey, write a piece for youth and empowerment, and that's a pretty broad topic, but like, look at all the different ways in. And I'm sure that any individual writer approaching this would do it in a way that was uniquely their own. So it was a really exciting thing to tackle. And in general, I love me some rules so that I can try to figure out how to break them, you know?
Well, thank you again. You three were incredible. Thank you to the wonderful directors and incredible actors. Thank you to Sean Burgos, our main guy behind everything, Vicky Nilsson, who is our co-creator of Pick Plays, stage manager. Stay with us. We're taking a 2-week break, and then we're coming back for discrimination on July 11th and ending with healthcare for our very last event for Pick Plays. Thank you.